Fred Kirschenmann of the Kirschenmann Family Farms, Windsor, North Dakota, is not only a practitioner of organic and sustainable agriculture, he is an eloquent messenger to the agricultural community, saying it works. By word and by successful example, he has persuaded farmers, including skeptics, to consider making changes in their methods. He is a sought-after speaker, both in his own region and around the country. 10 or so years ago, Dr. Kirschenmann returned to the family farm from the academic world, where he had been dean of Curry College. Determined to convert the operation to organic, he learned by doing, sometimes the hard way, because of the scarcity of answers to problems he encountered. He has shared his hard-earned wisdom in writings, in speeches, and in service to organizations seeking to encourage organic or sustainable agriculture. Jayne Gates of the Alternative Farming Systems Information Center at the National Agricultural Library will ask Fred Kirschenmann about his philosophy, his methods, and his family's experiences. We believe that his views will be an important contribution to the record the AFS Information Center is compiling on the influences changing American agriculture.
Well, Fred, you did say I should call you Fred.
Thank you.
It's really a pleasure to meet you here in Lincoln. You from North Dakota, Windsor.
That's correct.
And me all the way from Washington, D.C., well, almost Washington, D.C. The National Agricultural Library is right outside Washington in Beltsville. Have you ever been there?
Yes, I have.
It's a wonderful library, and we're here to talk about you, though, and not about me. Jayne had said that we would talk about your philosophy. I would ask you some questions, but in doing my homework for this interview, I couldn't find any information about your early years, where you got your schooling. Could you fill me in about that before we get down to the nitty-gritty?
Sure. Well, I grew up on the farm where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
That's home. In fact, I was born in the house that my parents live in, right? And went to elementary school in the rural community. Started in a rural one-room school,
mm-hmm.
and then eventually went to town school from the 7th grade on. And then I went to Yankton College in South Dakota, where
Yankton?
I took a liberal arts degree. And
not agriculture?
No, it was liberal arts. And then, in fact, from there went to seminary and took a degree in seminary, and then finally gravitated to a graduate school at the University of Chicago,
mm-hmm.
and finished my education there.
And got your degree there?
Yes, right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But you ended up dean of Curry College. What happened along the way to Curry College?
Well, I went back to my alma mater at Yankton College to teach initially. I headed up a religion department there,
mm-hmm.
taught religion and philosophy courses, and loved that. I don't know, there was something about creating change in me, I guess, that I felt driven to do, and found it difficult from the base of one department to initiate educational reform in the college as a whole,
mm-hmm.
and so decided to go into administration. Went from there to Dayton, Ohio, where I directed a consortium of colleges and universities and seminaries in the Dayton, Ohio area, and liked that as well, but missed the close contact with a smaller community.
Yes.
And so then was offered the job of academic dean at Curry College, which was a small liberal arts college outside of Boston, and so we went there.
And you say we. Along the way you picked up some family?
Yes, yeah.
Created a family.
Right, yeah. Janet and I got married in 1968, and
mm-hmm.
we have 2 children.
And they are at home still, or?
No. My daughter is, well, actually my daughter is sort of home again now. She went off on her own career and is back now, not on farm, but managing a program in organic certification systems.
So you and she have a bit in common.
That's right, yeah. My son is a second-year student at the University of Minnesota and embarking on a career as it appears in operatic voice. So.
Well!
That's the other extreme.
Uh-huh. So there's music in your family.
Yes, yeah.
Mm-hmm. The reason that you went from Curry College back to the family farm is because your father suffered a mild heart attack?
Well, actually, that was just sort of the catalyst. I really was introduced to organic agriculture by a student in Dayton, Ohio, while I was there. And part of the thing that began to happen to me was, growing up on the farm, and my father started farming in 1930, so he lived through the Dust Bowl and understood firsthand what could happen if you didn't take care of the land.
Had he bought, excuse me for interrupting, but had he bought the farm originally? Or
he originally leased it, and then bought it in the early 1940s. But his concern about caring for the land coming through that experience was something that I sort of learned by osmosis. And when I learned about organic agriculture, and some of the early indications were that that way of managing the soil was a better way to do things because it helped to restore organic matter and build soil structure and those kinds of things. And so I began to be concerned because I felt we had all this land entrusted to us up there in our family in North Dakota, and weren't caring for it in the best way possible.
Your father was farming it in a conventional, shall we say,
manner?
In
fact, my father was the first farmer in our township to begin using NPK fertilizers when they became available.
Oh, he was right on the cutting edge.
Right. And I shared with my father some of my new learnings about organic agriculture, and he concurred that from his own observation, he was seeing some of the detrimental effects on soil. But he was 68 years old at that point, and he said, for me to change my whole management on my farm at this point just is not in the picture. I mean, what I'm doing right now works for me, even if it may not be the best, and that's what I need to stay with. So that sort of continued bothering me inside. And then for a variety of reasons, Janet and I both started to get disenchanted with urban life. And there was a famous snowstorm in Boston in which we were shut up in our house in front of the fireplace for 3 days and began to share with each other the fact that we were disenchanted with urban life. And then when my father had his heart attack, he came out with my mother that Christmas and spent Christmas with us, and he announced to the family then that he was going to look for somebody to manage the farm.
Was this the Christmas following the snowstorm?
That's right. Yeah.
It all sort of fell into place.
So it was just obvious to us that that was what we were going to do next. So here we are.
To go back for a minute, I'm intrigued with the fact that you learned from your student.
Yes.
And I was going to ask you about inspirations and mentors along the way, and I think it's wonderful that the teacher learned from the student. Are you still in touch with this person? Or?
Yes, very much so. He, matter of fact, is an organic farmer here in Nebraska now.
Were you influenced by other people, or was he the one that really got you started thinking and investigating and reading on your own?
Yeah, David's the one that got me started.
His name is David?
David, yeah, David Vetter.
Vetter.
Right.
I have heard that name, yes.
So David got me started, and David and I had long conversations about some of the principles of organic agriculture, and I began to do some reading in the field. And along the way, there were, of course, a lot of people. My principal mentors, I think I would have to say, there were other farmers. When we first moved to North Dakota, we sort of assumed that we were the only organic farmers in the state.
You were out there pioneering, right? Yes.
Yeah. And then gradually we began to discover that there were others. And a meeting of farmers was called in Bismarck, North Dakota, a couple of years after we were out there. That was really a commercial meeting. It was called by a company that was wanting to sell so-called organic fertilizers. And that was the first time that many of us, there were about 100 folks there, and I was amazed that there were that many people that were interested in that.
And this would be about what year?
This was in 1978.
That is surprising.
Right. And they were really, the company folded. It was premature in terms of a market.
Yes.
But the service which they did for me was to get all of us together. And in that meeting, there was a very strong feeling among all of us that, or at least a core group of us, that we needed to stay in touch with each other. So we just somebody announced that, anybody that's interested in continuing some sort of network here, why don't you stay after the conference? And 45 people stayed. And out of that, we organized a little steering committee, and out of it evolved what is now the Northern Plains Sustainable Agriculture Society, which is a network of farmers that that organized to gather and share information about these kinds of systems.
And that's what you're currently president of, right?
I'm not right now the president. I was president for a number of years. Terry Jacobson, another farmer in North Dakota, is currently the president. Right?
Mm-hmm. And how many members does it have now?
It now has 200 members. Originally started out with 23. And we did absolutely nothing to promote it. It was all word of mouth.
Word of mouth.
Just,
communication.
But that was, both in terms of my philosophy about education, I guess, and in terms of what actually happened. Those of us in that association, we spent a lot of time on the phone. We have an annual conference, which is usually a sort of a 3-day affair in which we bring some resource people in to try to help us to better understand what's happening on the cutting edge. But basically, it's a matter of knowing each other, getting on the phone, and when we have a problem, and saying, finding out what somebody else has had that problem, sharing our successes and failures, and we just learn from each other. And it's sort of the reversal of the technology transfer approch to education,
yes, it certainly is.
Which it's very much. And one of the really exciting things that's happened in the last 2 years is that North Dakota State University has become very much involved with us, especially through the Carrington Research Extension Center, which has emerged as the primary center for sustainable ag research. And what's happened now is that network has moved on out, and the leadership at the center is who very much shares our concept of learning, and supports the notion that there are some things that we can learn from the research center and some things the research center can learn from farmers on the farm. And that two-way sharing has emerged in some very remarkable, exciting ways over the last 2 years.
It's not found in every state.
No.
Not at all.